precious attendees, our students. I all want to say thank you for participating today, and also I want to tell my deepest gratitude to the organizing committee of this marvelous symposium. Today we are here to talk on three different subjects. These are, as you saw in the title, digitalization, communication and politics, and these are three interconnected pillars that has undoubtedly transformed our lives, shaped our societies, and changed a lot of values in daily life. So we have a lot to discuss today. My name is Aybike Sertaş. I'm Associate Professor at İstinye University, Faculty of Communication. My major is Mass Media Studies, Audience Research, and also I'm focused on cinema and cinematography. So I'm really excited here to listen to the different perspectives on this subject. We would first start with Dr. Aslı Varol. She is an independent researcher. So each speaker has at around 20 minutes here. As you see, one of the speakers didn't attend today, so we all gained some extra time for the speakers. So each speaker would have 20 minutes, and please don't exceed the time. It is important for us to adhere the time limit. And I'm gonna sometimes check my phone to check the time, so I'm not gonna be busy on my phone. I'm gonna only check the timer. And also, after all the presentations are ended, we are gonna discuss the papers and get the questions and start the question and answer session. So thanks for participating again, and thanks for sharing this resource with us. And let's start with Dr. Aslı Varol.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. My presentation title is, as you see on the screen, Consultants Group of ChatGPT in Climate Change Diplomacy. You know ChatGPT is very famous these days. I would like to start my presentation with definitions of artificial intelligence. Firstly, I should say that artificial intelligence is not a new notion. I have two definitions I set. One of them is from the past and the other one is from the present. The word artificial intelligence was coined by the American computer scientist John McCarthy in 1956. McCarthy defined artificial intelligence as the science and engineering of making intelligent machines like the intelligent computer programs. And the present definition is from Europol. According to Europol's definition, artificial intelligence is a broad field of computer science that involves creating intelligent machines that can perform tasks that typically require human-level intelligence, such as understanding natural language, recognizing image, and making decisions. I will see these features on ChatGPT in the next slides. Next slide.
I think you are going to do it on your own,
Okay.
I can help you with that. Is there a pointer or something?
No. We'll go with artificial intelligence, yes, as a tool for diplomacy. And we can go to the next slide. As we see in these definitions, both definitions are very, very similar. What can we say about the diplomatic process? What is the role of the AI? Advances in artificial intelligence could reshape the practice of diplomacy and language processing. Algorithms will reduce language barriers between countries and allow easier communication between foreign governments and publics, and it's very, very important role of the AI today, I think. And AI technologies can help in election monitoring, peacekeeping operations, and ensure that financial and aid spending is not misused through annual detection. And language AI systems could provide great assistance to diplomats in times of crisis, helping make them sense of what's happening. This is the descriptive analytics, and the other one, identify possible trend, is predictive analytics. We can say that, we can repeat it, AI systems could provide great assistance to diplomats in times of crisis in two ways, descriptive analytics and predictive analytics. And also AI-based applications eliminate factors such as cultural differences, historical recognitions, language differences, and noise in the communication process. Artificial intelligence overcomes the personal and environmental barriers of communication in diplomatic activities. Next slide, yes. Let's come to ChatGPT's role for climate change diplomacy. You know, ChatGPT was developed by OpenAI. OpenAI is a San Francisco-based artificial intelligence research company, and ChatGPT, this type of ChatGPT, was released in November 2023. ChatGPT trained to include the vast population of articles, mails, websites, and social media posts from the internet, and it trained on real-time conversation with human contraction powered by OpenAI. It can mimic the grammar and structure of text and reflex common expressions, and it can recognize shapes and patterns in pictures, and it can match words and sentences with these shapes and patterns, allowing users to ask questions about the content of an image. Am I too speed? I want to use the time remotely.
It's okay, I'll take.
Next slide, we can. Climate change diplomacy is a new type of diplomacy, and it's consists of diplomatic efforts of governments, international and regional organizations, private sector, universities, NGOs, and individuals to mitigate effects of climate change at nation and international arena. Countries appoint special climate envoys to provide representation in the international negotiations and visits, and countries make very, very important appointments to climate envoys. Climate envoys present their countries in international meetings and forums on climate and environmental issues. As you know, they are the very important global challenges for our planet. Next slide. Yes, we are research method. My studies research method is text analysis, is a qualitative research method. The sample of this study consists of the text of the United States, Germany, and Netherlands on climate policies, and tweets, retweets, and quoted tweets of these countries' special climate envoys between 1st March 2023 and 31st March 2023. Now you see on the screen my studies main research questions and sub-questions that I asked to ChatGPT. First of all, scanning was carried out on the written content on Twitter in order to examine the connection between the answers given to the sub-questions created to answer the main research question and the climate change terminology. In order to answer main research questions, sub-questions were prepared to determine whether ChatGPT has the consistency, knowledge, and competence. In these sub-questions, three basic concepts are discussed in the context of climate change. These concepts are the Paris Climate Agreement, as you see in the first question, one of the sub-questions, and global warming and migration due to climate change. A total of 8 questions were prepared on this concept. The first of 3 questions are questions approach the issue of climate change from a more general perspective. The other 5 questions are on the basis of countries and have a specific content. My research, I want to repeat my research question. Can ChatGPT offer concept information to climate envoys for diplomatic negotiations? Yes, we can go on. Table 1 is Table 1 represents the concepts related to climate change in special climate envoys. U.S. Special Presidential Envoy John Kerry, I guess you know John Kerry, German agent Morgan Nederland, Jaime de Borgo Barney. First of all, the written contents of the Twitter accounts of this special climate envoys, and I scanned the climate change terminology, and I tabulated all of them, and we will seek these concepts in the ChatGPT's answers. We can move on. Yes, we can start research questions. My first sub-question is a research question. What does Paris Climate Agreement recommend to countries to tackle climate change? And I can't wait to share my studies results. I should say ChatGPT's answers are very, very impressive. And as we see here, ChatGPT can provide explanatory and broad answers to questions in climate change diplomacy. In the first question, after giving can we make it broad? Bigger.
You can make it full screen.
Yes.
Full screen. And also, can we turn off the lights?
Sure.
Because there's a reflection, so we cannot see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
ChatGPT, in the first question, after giving detailed information about the Paris Climate Agreement, it completed to answer with a summary sentence. And we see here mitigation, national determined contributions, and it's a very controversial part of the Paris Climate Agreement, as you know. Adaptation, climate finance is very important for the developed countries and underdeveloped countries. Technology transfer and capacity building, transparency and accountability, and global stock take. And all of this was written by the ChatGPT. We can move on. Second question, how does global warming affect oceans? ChatGPT gives a very, very beautiful answer. In this question, with a general introductory paragraph that discussed the effects of global warming on the oceans in all its dimensions. We can move on. Third question, what is the migration due to climate change? Similarly, ChatGPT has a very long answer. After giving a brief definition of migration due to climate change, it lists the reasons with explanations why climate change leads to migration. In the last paragraph, as we see here, to answer, it states that climate change is not only reason for migration, and it gives ChatGPT gives advice on the need for comprehensive strategies to combat climate change. We can move on to the next table. This table is about the US climate change policy. It's a comparison of the US climate change policy and ChatGPT answer. Here you say a piece of the US climate change policy, which was prepared by Congressional Research Service in 2021. It's a little piece, and we can move on to see the research question and ChatGPT's answer. Research questions 4 and 5 are here. What is the US role in the Paris Climate Agreement, and can the US achieve its Paris Climate Agreement goals? As we see here, ChatGPT firstly expresses the role of the US in the Paris Climate Agreement objectively. Then it writes the targets of the US in detail. For example, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, enhancing climate resilience and adaptation, providing climate finance. ChatGPT does not give an answer yes or no. The second question, the fifth question. In turn, it outlines in detail the elements necessary for the United States to achieve the Paris Climate Agreement goals. We can move on. Table 4. This table consists of the comparison of Germany's climate action plan 2050 and the ChatGPT's answer to this question. firstly, we see a little piece of the climate action plan of Germany. Energy transition is very important for Germany in climate change diplomacy process, and Germany's climate envoys expresses it too much. Research question 6 is, why is the energy transition is so important for Germany? ChatGPT also denotes the term energy transition as Energiewende as German. Energiewende is also seen the twist of Germany's special climate envoy in table 1, we saw it. In its answer, ChatGPT emphasized that energy transition is a crucial and strategic goal for Germany. Then it explains in detail the importance of energy transition for Germany. In addition, it's seen that makes a comparison, here is very important, fossil fuels and renewable energy. ChatGPT can make comparisons in its own. I think it's a very important feature as a ChatGPT as an artificial intelligence chatbot. We can move on to the last table, my research. This table is comparison of the Dutch climate agreement and ChatGPT's answer to the question regarding the Netherlands. And we see on the screen a little piece of the climate agreement of Netherlands. It was prepared by the government of Netherlands in 2019. We can move on to see the questions. Research questions 7 and 8. What is the Dutch government's central goal with the National Climate Agreement 2019? And can national and international agreements such as Dutch Climate Agreement and Paris Climate Agreement prevent migration due to climate change? Table 5 shows that ChatGPT gives an answer consistent with the Dutch government's climate agreement. However, it explains why national and international agreements such as the Dutch Climate Agreement and the Paris Climate Agreement are not sufficient on their own to prevent migration due to climate change. In this answer, ChatGPT gives insight to what needs to be done as well as those deals. ChatGPT, as we see in my study, ChatGPT also provided explanatory information to specific questions on the basis of countries. However, the language of ChatGPT seems to resemble a translation program in some places. On the other hand, it gives the impression that it gives the answer by discussing different dimensions. I think this is also a very important feature for ChatGPT because it formed the answer by listing other factors instead of a single point of view. As seen in all answers, ChatGPT is able to present the information as an organized and meaningful whole. All this indicates that ChatGPT can provide a consulting work in climate change diplomacy. With other words, the main question of the research, can ChatGPT offer consulting information to climate envoys for diplomatic negotiations? Answer, yes, it can. In conclusion, we can move on to the next slide. With ChatGPT show, artificial intelligence can be helpful for climate envoys in providing necessary data, alternative implementation for diplomatic processes. Today, business competition is between human and artificial intelligence. It is possible to make this competition efficient for climate change diplomacy. For this reason, it is necessary to provide artificial intelligence and human integration in diplomacy. Today, in diplomacy, it's inevitable to benefit from the opportunities to artificial intelligence in order to access information, create meaningful hope from it, and transfer it to other people rapidly. For this reason, it's necessary to ask the right questions in order to work efficiently with chatbots such as ChatGPT. Asking the right questions also removes residues, as can be seen in ChatGPT. ChatGPT can give competent answers to the right questions in climate change diplomacy. In my study, it has been understood that ChatGPT can act as a consultant to the climate envoys of countries by providing consistent and objective answers in climate change diplomacy. Companies now hire prompt engineers who are experts at talking to AI systems effectively. Similarly, states and governments should hire hire from engineers for their diplomacy teams, because those working in specific diplomacy fields such as climate change should ask the right questions to ChatGPT. Thank you.
So you have 1 minute left. So it was a successful timing. Thank you very much, and it's really an original subject. I wondered how you are involved working on climate diplomacy. It's an original subject too.
Yes, because I'm working on diplomacy practices. In fact, I'm a public relations PhD. I have a public relations PhD, yes. You know, diplomacy is a special part of strategic communication, so I'm writing on diplomacy. I have 3 books on diplomacy. Climate change is a very special area in diplomacy, and I like to study about climate change for our planet.
Thank you. So, is there any questions? We have time to take some questions.
Just, yeah, thank you. Very interesting presentation. I just wondered what you think about the way that, obviously AI has tremendous potential to be incredibly helpful. It's frightening how helpful it can be. But what do you think about the way that Brussels is pushing ahead with introducing quite a restrictive regime and the concerns about safety and governance? What do you think about that? In the light of your findings, do you think that the concerns are overblown?
I can say that AI has a huge potential for every government and every management. If you use it for your beneficial aims, of course they are very, very subjective. I think. For example, in democracies, in democratic countries, you can use AI for make free your societies. But in authoritarian regimes, you can AI, unfortunately, make pressure to your societies because you have a chance for do this. I think I believe that we will use AI for good reasons and for the brighter future of our planet, our nations, and because it's necessary to globalize the world, I think.
Thank you.
And do you have any other questions? Do you have a question?
I have. Yes. Thank you very much for the presentation. This is very one of the exploratory findings on ChatGPT, since ChatGPT is new. Okay. Okay. I'd like to know how do you suggest if you want to check the reliability of ChatGPT in providing answers? What do you suggest to check on the reliability of ChatGPT for answers? Is there any you can suggest?
Yes, I can check the answers because I know about a lot of things climate change terminology. I completed my study with prompt engineers and you who will work in with ChatGPT should be dominate the area. Which area it will work with ChatGPT? Yes, I know climate change diplomacy terminology, climate change terminology, and I'm writing on it and I'm studying on it, and so I can check the answers.
Oh, okay. Because I'm expecting some methodological answers, like if you want to measure if ChatGPT is reliable for this kind of topics, because you are familiar with climate changes, for example, and not others, and how like that layman would be familiar with the answers. So maybe in future we need to have some analysis on how this ChatGPT can be reliable when it comes to this kind of information.
Yeah, it's about your proficiency. Proficiency, which was proficiency competence.
Okay.
Yeah, the biggest problem is the reliability of
the reliability of the
of the content. And personally, I use ChatGPT a lot because I have to check all the student assignments. And I'm asking ChatGPT, did you write this? And he or she, it answers, yeah, I wrote this, or no, it's human made. So, yeah, I have to check all the assignments because I can sense that the students didn't prepare the assignment. And in our system, we are using a system named as Blackboard at school. The students are uploading their papers to the Blackboard, and there is a system that is checking the plagiarism. But also, this system cannot check the ChatGPT content. It cannot get it. So I copy the text based to ChatGPT, ask, did you write this, and so on. Yeah. And the students are asking me, how did you get it, how did you understand? But I can. And also ChatGPT can too. And it's an interesting dialogue between me and ChatGPT.
It's supposed to free you from work, and
I spent a lot of time to check it one by one, but I wrote it, so I have to do it. So, and it can also write scripts for the cinema students. They just enter the keywords, write me a short film about this subject, about this length, and so on. And it can write scripts. It can do anything. So yeah, we have to face with ChatGPT. We can't just deny it. By the way, our session subject is about redefining the power dynamics. So this paper was really connected with this subject. So thank you, we are enlightened. And now we are going to continue with Assistant Professor Nafise Esmail Mottan. And she has an interesting subject too. Iranian political mobilization in the information age. So, thank you.
Because this is not you'll be used here? Yeah, I prefer to do it. Just a little bit, just a second.
And this paper is focused on social movements and new media.
Well, thank you very much. This is the second time I have a chance to present in this seminar. Yes, my name is Nafisa. I'm from Nishantasi University, New Media Department of Communication. I think you're mostly familiar with the movement which is still happening. You can see ongoing in Iran, the Women Life Freedom. The movement started from in September 2022 and it has different demands, mostly on political freedom, economic opportunities, and human rights. But due to surprise, in Iran, as you know, the internet is blocked. I mean, somehow is under control of the government. All the social media are blocked. The people use VPN to access to internet. All the mainstream media are under control of the government, owned by government. The opposition newspaper and media has been banned, mostly around 2010. But we surprised when we see the hashtag of Masa Amini, like somehow broke the record in Twitter, 280 million people, 80 million hashtags, Instagram over 100 million, and TikTok 920 million times. But how come in a country that internet is banned and censorship is high, we reached this record? This research I mean, it is a broader research, but I'm giving you some of the findings. One of the strategic, very interesting strategy that Iranian use, mostly by the younger generation, who's been somehow not ignored by, looked down in the political atmosphere of Iran, was to engage the global politically neutral influencers. They get them involved. People who are unpacking cosmetics, people who are reviewing games or movies, people who, I mean, the young generation who are not really involved in politics. And the young generation in Iran, through this hashtag, they get them involved. Mostly because the motto and the demand was in human rights, of course. Maybe if it was only focused on economy, we couldn't have this chance to get them engaged in this movement. But somehow, because of the system, the algorithm, and so on, now many of these influencers, they are responding to hashtag because it's trend. Some of them, yes, they are getting involved because of the content. So somehow, this new generation, who we see them very far from politics, they get involved in such a huge topic in a country that everything is banned in internet. I mean. But that makes me go through a historical analysis and review of the 153 years of struggles of Iranian towards democracy, and see how they use media in different movements and uprising and revolutions and so on in the last 152 years. We're going to start with the constitutional movement, and somehow I tried to, in parallel way, just for, I thought maybe it's interesting for my Turkish student as well, to compare the time. We're talking about 1870s, between 1880s, 70s and 80s, when the first constitutional movement happened in Iran, the demand to establish a parliament next to the monarchy system. But it failed. Mostly because of the foreign power interference and, of course, internal political divisions and conservative religious leaders who were against it. But this is the time, in this time, the Turkey, under the Ottoman Empire, they established probably the first parliament in the region. But this movement succeeded around 10-20 years later, and we succeeded to have a constitutional movement. But newspaper at those times was very important. Newspaper was a tool that the opposition would say, I would say, use it to inform people. But the problem was the literacy rate was so low, so not much people could really get involved in this. And thanks to Turkey, many politicians, because of the control and the authoritarian system, they found Istanbul as a safe place to publish their newspapers. So the newspaper used to publish them in Istanbul and smuggling to Iran. This is the list of the most influential newspapers. But in 1953, when one of the results of the constitutional system, during the Mossadegh presidency, we were into the nationalization of oil. But unfortunately, mostly through US and the United Kingdom, the coup happens. So they take the Mossadegh down, and the Shah of Iran returned to the power. But those times, the radio was the main tool to do that, to succeed this coup, mostly by CIA and MI6, which is now lots of movies and documents are now revealed. But of course, again, this was a really good tool to do that, because they could access to many people, even in rural area, to listen to the news and everything. But after the second time that Shah of Iran get to power, he found that maybe he can do a kind of reform in Iran. They call it White Revolution. He wanted to modernize Iran economy and society and give land to more people, gave women more rights, and made education and healthcare bigger. In 1963, like 30 years after Turkey, Iranian women could vote for the first time. But this modernization was not really in line with mostly the religious community and leaders. So there were lots of critics about, not only from the religious group, I mean mostly I would say the extremists, but also from the leftists and Marxists in Iran. And they were looking at this modernization and everything, I don't know, westernization, and they were thinking that the wealth is not distributing fairly, and still the parliament does not have enough power. So there were lots of criticism. But my point is, on those time, Shah was using TV, national TV, to like somehow inform people about the new law and regulations, new school laws, I don't know, hospitals, and water supply networks, new agricultural cooperative aims, and so on and so on. But only 22% of people access to TV. So that was not probably a very wise tool for media. But these two groups are really important in Iran this time, because they were trying to somehow show the disagreement, and they were the main group of opposition in Iran. Why I'm highlighting them? Because I just want to know which media they used and how they used it to express themselves, and what was the result. The result, of course, ended up in 1972 as the Islamic group like somehow took the power, and on that time, Shah of Iran, after the White Revolution, he increased the oil prices, and that is one of the reasons that, especially from the United States, that was not a good decision. So because the economy was really on those times were dependent on the oil. But my point here is the leftists and communists were using still written material. They were using newspaper, daily, and magazines, and while the literacy rate in Iran was only 36, about 50. So not many people were able to get the message. But at the same time, the Islamic group were using cassette. They call it, even for the first time in a book, I read Iran Revolution as the cassette revolution. That was really interesting for me, which is true. The cassette that does not really need electricity because it was working even with the battery. So people in small villages even could be able to listen to the leader Khomeini's speech. I don't know, some of the songs that the artists were singing to show the unity and all. So this tool was more successful as a media tool to reach to the people and create a sense of unity. So, yeah. But it's not only Iran, exactly on the same day, same years, in South Africa and Uganda also, they used the cassette to succeed the revolution. Okay. After Islamic revolution, immediately a few months later, we end up in a war between Iraq for 8 years, another 8 years of rebuilding the country, the economy and everything, get a little bit stable. That was the first time that Iranians showed the desire for freedom, social freedom mostly. This is the first social reform movement in Iran around 2000s. I was like graduating from high school that time, and I was starting working in a newspaper as a journalist and photojournalist while I was studying my bachelor in journalism. So I was really getting involved in this movement. So that was the time of, for the first time and last time probably, reformists could get some place in the society and politics. But the tool for that time was newspaper, of course, and blog. The blog was the biggest tool to express the alternative idea. For the first time, I would say that Iranian would listening to new ideas, alternative ideas. It was for decades we were listening to few channels on TV, few channels on radio, few newspaper, and it was the society got some colors, you know. And here, the first generation of bloggers, I'm here, it makes me always laugh. This blog, my blog was very popular at this time. Maybe 3,000 people were reading my blog. I was covering the backstage of the news and everything. Yes, the literacy on those days, the literacy was reached to 87%. But we were thinking that we were doing revolution. We were thinking that is the thing. This is what we can really make a change. But we were not aware that maybe we were not considered that in 2000 the internet access was less than 1%. And during the time when the access to internet was increasing, government started blocking the internet and all. In 2005 it's reached to 6, and now it's, I don't know the latest, but almost everywhere in small villages the access to internet, but the internet is very limited, very restricted. So Iranian bloggers, many of them young and politically engaged, use their blog to discuss a range of political and social issues. These blogs provided a space for dissenting voices to be heard and allowed reformists, activists to organize and mobilize support. And also at the same time, the satellite TV appeared. The opposition who left the country and they started working. Many of them were the journalists who've been arrested or were they received some threats. So they left Iran to actually work somehow with this satellite TV that really changed the atmosphere. So we could listen to the mainstream local news and then change the channel to see the same news from another angle. So that was really important, very important. Alternative media outlets such as satellite TV channels also play an important role in the reform movement. Channels such as the Persian language BBC, Voice of America, Radio Tomorrow, and so on. So these channels were able to provide more balanced and critical coverage of political events in Iran, and their program was watched and listened to by millions of people. So that's the time that government took action. So they took action by new laws. So we never heard the law for satellite TV, law for new law for blog, new law for, and they were saying that these are a threat to national security and the Islamic regime employed a system of legal and extra-legal measures to silence bloggers and social media activists. This includes the issue of broadly word law to criminalize online activities such as dissemination of propaganda against the regime, which is like a crime, insulting the sensitization of Islam, and bloggers who were arrested, many of them arrested. More than 50 newspapers has been shut down over a year, including online and paper. So now we had young generation who been arrested because of the post, because of the activity on social media and lots of newspaper. This is the time that, like we call it, after that, suppression of media. So it never go back to the same state after this years. Many journalists left Iran, and In 2009, the movement is still ongoing. Another social movement, mostly political, this time political, that was the social reform, this time political, the green movement we call it. The Iranian political system with months and strict demonstration and protest brutally suppressed by hardliners. The green movement ultimately failed to achieve its goal of political reform, but the legacy of the movement continues to shape. Even now, the Mahsa Amini, the woman life freedom, we see the root here, starting from this movement. So of course, suppressed, but we see this is the beginning. That time, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube was, it was not Instagram yet, but these three platforms help us a lot to organize, to inform each other, and to coordinate the activities. The Iranian government's response to the green movement and social media was to tighten its control over the flow of information and limited dissenting voices. Since then, all the social media are blocked, and people use VPN to access. Surprisingly, on those days, it was not only Iran. A year later, we see the spring of the Arab Spring, following by the Gezi Park protests in Turkey. This is the time that the social media changed the algorithm to more commercial. It was scary. Everywhere is like started a kind of movement. So they changed the algorithm mostly towards, they call it customize it, in a way that if you like Turkish music, you're going to listen to Turkish, you're going to receive Turkish news. If you like, I don't know, if you're interested in any subject, you're going to receive everything based on your own interest. So to me, somehow, this is a dramatic change of turning somehow the web, which was to me at that time a very democratic tool. So it was like a library. You could go in and you take different ideas. Oh, that was amazing. So they turned it to TV, to a personal TV, like every one of us now, to me, is carrying our personal TV. Is very difficult to access and get new ideas to, even if you follow 100,000 of people. But in this time, when I see Mahsa Amini find another way to get involved people, that is, considering the censorship, considering a new algorithm in social media, still people find a way to engage millions of people across the world to get involved.
Do you mean the contents by turning the web into the
Yes, the system, the social media system, to me is more like a TV than the web that I introduced in 2000. Because on those days I could follow different ideas. But now I'm made to follow the ideas that confirm mine because of the light and everything. So in 2017, after they block everything, after they control everything, that was the biggest, the biggest demonstration that, across the country because of the rise of petrol. This is the economy. This time is economy because of the economic clash. So unfortunately, we could not pass the social reform. We could not pass the political reform, and now this is the economic clash happens. I was here in Istanbul. That for 10 days they shut down everything. I could not even communicate with my family, my parents. So in that time, nobody knows how many people. We don't have access to real statistics of people who've been killed. They said over 1,500 people in 10 days, and they kick out all the journalists, mostly the foreign journalists. So we couldn't get people involved. So because we did not access to cover the news, so we could not even spread the news. So that is one of the brutal suppression that happened. I'm going. Unfortunately, the government imposed an internet blackout, blocking access to social media platforms, messaging apps, etc. Severely restricted the ability of local and international journalists and news organizations to report on the process. Here we see no media, and this is that's why I turned to black. The conclusion. This is, as I said, this is an ongoing research. Hopefully I'm preparing for a good chapter. Of course, there is always, no matter what government, before revolution or after revolution, Islamic revolution, we always see the media under control of the authoritarian system. There is always people try to use alternative media, but what is important for me to consider that you should use the right media. With the access, you should consider the accessibility, you should consider the literacy, now internet literacy or digital literacy or literacy in general, but the speed effort of strict freedom of expression and suppression. Alternative media channels have continued to provide a platform for opposition group and activities to organize and mobilize, highlighting the resilience of social and civil society in the face of government repression. That's all. Thank you.
So, is there any questions, any contributions to this subject? Professor, I have a research on Iranian cinema. Yeah, I focused on Jafar Panahi's movies and I really love his works, his productions. And I worked on the representation of women in Iranian women. Yeah, so
this movie or
yes,
in general?
in his movies. Yes, I chose his 4 movies, including the Circle, the Mirror, and the others. So I focused on the woman issue in Iranian context. Yeah, I would like to share it.
Sure. Actually, I'm in school of film Deutsche. I have a documentary film coming up in November for the 100 years of the Republic in Turkey. It's going to broadcast in Arte in Germany and Netherlands about electronic music, dance and nightlife in Istanbul in the last 40 years. We have a film production company here, so if we can help you in any sense, I will take you. I will, of course.
Thank you. So it was interesting for me to listen to the subject from your point of view, because I have some research on Iranian history, especially political history. So it was.
It's quite hard.
Yes, it is. It's hard to read it.
Yeah.
Even hard to read it, so I cannot think of it. So thanks for listening, sharing. Thank you. So our last presentation is Professor Norhayaki's presentation on solving environmental conflicts.
I found my old classmate from Malaysia.
Yeah.
Actually, we were classmates in Malaysia. It was very interesting to see.
I think more than 10 years.
Yeah.
Small world. We were in the same class.
Yes.
We met here.
And now we are sitting next to each other.
Yes, very interesting.
Okay.
Communication and politics.
Okay, inshallah, today I will present this analysis of bibliometry on digital negotiation in solving environmental issues. My PhD is in negotiation and environmental issues. So these papers authored with Noraidis. We know that negotiation, by definition, we need to have conflicting parties. They argue over each other, or maybe they want to find any consensus between them. Common behavior that we try to look for during the negotiation. It's not necessary, it's not compulsory, it may not happen, but we used to. We always try to find any common behavior between us so we can find that consensus easily. And through a channel, for the past decades, we do it face to face, because
is about conflict, any issues. So face-to-face is the best channel to negotiate, and then we look for the outcomes. What are the results? Whether it's win-win, win-lose, lose-lose, it depends on the issues. So in 2019, pandemic COVID-19 came to the world. I'm not saying in Malaysia, but to our world. So it changed so many things, especially the way we communicate with each other, because we can't go, we couldn't get out from our house, we couldn't see our parents at the hardest part, we couldn't even, actually it's only like 1 kilometer away, but we still couldn't see them. But alhamdulillah, for the technology advances, we managed to communicate with each other, am I right? And how about the business? What's going on with our daily life? Education, work, journalists, media. We need programs on television. How about environment? We need people to clean up. We need people to look after the trees. We need to look after the cleanliness of the environment as well. So, in this time, we have ministerial meetings by World Trade Organization. At this time, it's all important in the world level. We have Convention on Biological Diversity, biodiversity losses, and then Climate Change Conference, all been cancelled. Okay, been cancelled. So it was such not dramatical, but at least biggest concern, especially among environmentalists. They were very because they can't present, they can't discuss, okay? They can't discuss, and we had G7, G20 at that time. Yeah. Now Malaysia especially, we have floods. At the same time, we have this time in Malaysia we have experienced very high temperature, very hot. They text me, it's very hot in Malaysia, very hot, very hot. And they claim that I'm very lucky because I'm in Turkey, Istanbul, so it's cold. So I don't have to complain anything about cold because the weather is very hot in Malaysia. So that is where the negotiation becomes very challenging. Because why it keeps on going? Sorry about that. Maybe when I set up the presentation. So because speaking of negotiation, we are transferring data, information, we are exchanging information, facts and figures. So then suddenly we need to do it over the net. We have to do emails, one to many, many to many. Suddenly WhatsApp group becomes very popular, and to be honest, I'm not comfortable with the WhatsApp group, and you have to say everything publicly. I would say publicly, even the small group. And for the negotiation itself, there is issues of security, transparency, and then participation. Even though we have online meeting, how many of them would turn up? Sometimes we were in the kitchen. They were doing something else at the same time. It's so chaotic. Like I can imagine that, especially for I'm not saying that I'm young, but I'm also old. But we have older people who has to go through the experience of technology. That is, that is even worse. We expect the professors or even our seniors to click on this, click on the laptop, click on the open the camera, and alhamdulillah at the same time where the advantage goes to the trading, online trading. That is what happened in Malaysia. So in this situation, developing countries actually, based on the findings from previous research, had worse situation than the developed countries. Developed countries has stable in established technologies, the use of technologies, it becomes we are very familiar, but it does not happen in developing countries. And some of us, they have to share one laptop with 10 kids. At the same time, the kids have to attend online classes, and the mother say, I cannot come to the meeting because my laptop being used by my kids. That is the reality. So when it comes to negotiation, it's the same thing. It's an advantage to developed countries, but not to developing countries. So this research aims to identify the trends of studies examining digital negotiation and environmental issues during that time, and then to identify the areas of studies related to negotiation and environmental issues. The methodology is we use the BiblioShiny software, and we are looking at the Scopus publication. This is so far I'm not saying that the Scopus is the best especially for knowledge access, but Scopus is one of the publication platform that has high credibility. From the search, we found only 104 articles. 104 articles related to negotiation and environmental issues. Yeah. So what happened? 104 these documents, and then we use the word environment and negotiate. So because we don't want to miss anything on negotiation, negotiated, so we put negotiate, and this is the article. Okay. There was a decrease actually at that time, 2019, from 2017. We did the search from between 2017 until 2022 and 2023, and only 3 articles related to negotiation and environmental issues. While citation, not much, but it is obvious. There's less research being published in Scopus about this. This is the journals publish the related documents, and this is very important. We have more, speaking of female and male, on the differences analysis. Okay, and then interpersonal communication, because it is negotiation, they do this comparison between male and female in negotiation process, age, and then climate change and decision making. For the citation, very much from these 3 countries, Canada, United Kingdom, and United States of America. So the conclusion, there is a huge gap in the research studies examining digital negotiation and environmental issues. If you see the diagram, the pyramid, nothing on digital. For Scopus publication, COVID-19 affects the feasibility of research activities. It limits the way we collect data, and because in negotiation, of course, we use the method of experimental participation. Then the publication is limited to Scopus only, but when I did the Google search still only 277 articles. So the purpose of this presentation is to give some overview of the existing publications on these 2 variables, negotiation and environmental issues. We encourage, of course, we can see that there is a gap, and of course there is much space we need to examine about this digital negotiation and environmental issues. So with that, thank you very much for listening. This lovely evening. That's all. Any questions?
was the fastest presentation actually. You have 9 minutes.
Yes. I would love to hear more from you, rather than because my data is very straightforward.
Okay. Is there any questions from the listeners, from our researchers? I wonder about the further research.
Further research. For further research, I will have to. Actually, I'm publishing books. This is partly where we're looking at the negotiation in climate changes, in Malaysia particularly. With this data, we have some suggestions on the elements or items that we need to measure when it comes to negotiation and other issues. So it provides some overview to support as a gap of studies for our publication.
Because this looks like a starting point for the other resource, like an introduction. So
yes, I agree. Because we look at the patterns, we look at this when we search by the keywords, we then find how we can increase the strength of our publications by the keywords. So that's why keywords is very important when we publish articles and we write, because we catch with the keywords. Okay, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. So before closing this session, are there any contributions, any comments, anything to mention? So,
Thank you for all the papers. They were really well presented. Enjoyed them very much. Thank you.
And it was interesting to witness different perspectives, listen to the different resources. These are new topics for me actually. They are really unique. This session's topics are extremely original. So thanks a lot for participating, and hope to see you in another session.